So for this portion of the presentation, we're going to speak with a student today, and he's going to provide the student perspective of class participation, communication, engagement. So our student today is Matthias, and I'll allow him to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matheus Ferreira. I'm a senior in the School of Business. I'm a management major. I'm from Belo Horizonte, Brazil. I transferred to Oneida de Lake during the fall 2017 from Western Nebraska Community College. And at this point, I have taken several face-to-face and online classes.
Great. Okay, so the first question that we have for you is, what are the best ways faculty can communicate with students outside of class?
So with my experience as a student, I know some of the students prefer to use the email provided by the school, but also as many of us use smartphones nowadays, we use a lot of apps, different apps to communicate with our family, friends, and everything. And I think that could also be used by faculties to communicate with us. Some of the apps that I would recommend that from my own experience is WhatsApp, especially for international students and folks that have family abroad. Also iMessage, but this app is specific for iPhones, so I don't know the disponibility of faculty and students on that situation. And also I have used before Microsoft Teams with some of my group projects, and the students also have a good responsive response level on using that app.
Okay. What do you think is important for faculty to know about today's students?
Okay, so I believe nowadays students are really reliable on technology, as everyone is really dependable on technology nowadays, and it also brings us a lot of information, and all that information can be really useful, but at the same time we are not sure if that information is reliable. And at this point, I believe students they receive a lot of information from all kind of source, and the main point will be students trying to be part of the solution, the work, and trying to reach out for information that provide them the ability and the skills necessary to solve some of the world's problems. And because of that, I also think they the students are more successful when they work in group activities and in interactive activities that can motivate them to try to look for more ways to solve those problems and apply them in a real world situation. And I believe some of the um, some of the learning styles nowadays can be innovated to try to take the best out of the students. And some of the students, they think that they innovate the learning style is still not as updated as the technology and all the information we have nowadays.
Okay, thank you. So for you, what do you think is a good use of class time?
So as I mentioned before, I believe trying to discuss current topics there in your society nowadays will be a good way to spend the class time with. some hands-on activities and also group projects so we can discuss between the students and also the instructor to try to apply the topics we're covering during the class time to solve some of the projects and some of the situations of, happening in the world right now, such as the COVID-19, or maybe the science students, maybe they could be discussing the symptoms, how they can um, prevent those symptoms, how they can come with some solution for that. I know business and everything are already doing that, so but maybe some of the students they are not participating as much as they are focusing on trying to get their grades done, so they don't read as much, they don't look for sources, but that could be way to interact more with the real world as after we graduate, we are being actually going to face all those situations in real time and not just trying to get a passing grade for our classes.
Okay. So it sounds like the preference for you, the preference for you would be to not spend your entire class time just listening to a lecture, but have some mixture of providing the information and then incorporating an activity or sharing ideas with other students on how to push that idea along.
Yes, exactly. So I know some of the courses they are really tight in time. They need to get all the information that is in the syllabus, but maybe some group projects outside of the class time, just to trying to make the student engage with the community and the society and trying to solve those problems that we are facing on a daily basis. So, as I mentioned before, every school, business school, science school, they could just trying to see how those situations could relate to their courses and trying to make students think a little bit outside of the box.
Okay, thanks. So, speaking of activities, can you provide an example of a course activity that resonated with you and explain why?
Okay, so some of the activities that really resonate with me was some research papers, as I had to really go through the topic and trying to absorb as most as I could to put in a paper, to type it up in a paper, because it was something that, as I was mentioning before, it goes out, outside of the class. I really had to go through a lot of documented such research websites, books, and everything to try to absorb as most information as I could to to write down my paper. Also, interactive activities, as I was mentioned before, some of my classes I had to do some simulations and games that I'm really competitive, so I was trying to get most as I could out of the situation and trying to do my best to really like, and in the same way I was learning, I was competing with my classmates. So I thought was really helpful for my learning experience as every time that I could, I was always reading about the subject and trying to learn a little bit more to apply for the simulation, and the competition. Also, debates and discussions. I'm not really, I don't speak a lot in class, but I always observe a lot when I listen to other students and their perspective, because everyone have a different background, a different experience at home. So people tend to see situations in a different way. So I believe discussions and debates are really helpful as well for all the classmates, and including myself.
Good, thanks. Have any of your professors used educational technology tools in class that you felt have been helpful?
Oh yes, definitely. I have used Kahoot. It's a it's a quiz. It's like a quiz that you have to use your phone to access. Um, it's like an app. You log in using a code, and then in some cases we have the instructor making the questions. Us as a students need to answer that. But some of the professors also made um, available for other students to create those questions as a group presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll have the Kahoot quiz, so we could absorb as most as we could from those subjects talking during the lecture. Also, I used a Market Watch game with a simulation as well, and um, it basically gives us the stock market um, environment. We have all the current stocks, um, and we are able to trade those stocks in real time without using any money. And I believe I used for business finance in my previous semester, and that was really helpful because I could see how um, the stock market really works without having to um, put my money on that situation. So I could see how the market fluctuates and everything. That was really helpful for me at the time. I could learn a lot about the stock market and kind of lose a little bit of the. I was scared to start trading and I didn't know how to do it, so that was really helpful. Also, the marketplace business simulation. I have been using this semester for one of my classes, and that was really helpful. We had to use all our business knowledge, all the skills we developed along of the our majors, because that this class is specific is a pre-requirement to graduate in a business school. So everybody has to take that class before graduating, and it's an upper level class. So we had to get to that point. We had to take a lot of classes previously to develop the skills to learn to have the knowledge um, to take the decisions in that business simulation, because the business simulation requires you to learn to know a little bit of marketing, finance, accounting, manufacturing, how to. So it's more like um, a critical thinking type of simulation. You need to take the right decision at that time, and you walk that simulation specific was in a group, so we also had to be able to communicate with our group members, just like I believe not in the same way, but it gave it to us as um, real companies environment. So the entire class was really competitive, trying to um, learn more as everybody could, and trying to win the competition. So I thought that was helpful, and we are learning without actually like having to read a book, or I mean, we had to read books and to get to that point, but it was not directly. You're thinking about the competition, but also absorbing and learning a lot.
Thank you. And then just to wrap it up, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with faculty about the student experience?
I believe every student's different, and all of them have a uh, preferential way to learn, and they're different in the way they um, learn and adapt to situations. So some students prefer to read and they learn a lot reading. Some of the students, they are more relaxed. They're better at doing instead of just stepping back and seeing a lecture. So they are really hands-on in situations, and just I think students students have different ways to learn, and when like creating the lectures, make sure that they try to um, interact with all kinds of students so they can stay engaged and absorb the most of the subject, and trying to develop those connection with students, because some of the students, they get lost because they are not doing something they believe is going to help them in the future. They're just sitting there and they'll be like, oh, this class is boring and I'm just like here to pass this class because I need to graduate. But they are not able to relate those subjects into the real world and how they can apply um, um, those lectures, those courses into the real world situation, how they are going to be able to, okay, I'm learning this so I can apply, for example, in the future I'll have my own business, so I need to learn accounting so I can, even though I don't need to do a bookkeeping in my company, I know how someone else is doing it and making sure they are doing the right way. Or, for example, for a science major, if they're taking a chemistry, they can relate that into, I don't know, in the future they can work in a lab, and the chemistry they're learning in school, they can relate to something else in the future. They can possibly do, as they have that background and they have that knowledge. Some students, they're just in class to pass it, get the passing grade, and I mean, a couple months later they forget everything because they didn't learn in the way they could actually learn it. They were just studying to pass that class.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.